Thank you, everybody, for coming along, because I know you'll get inspiration from hearing about Paula and the great work that she does and her wonderful book. So by way of a more formal introduction, I want you to know that Paula is a best-selling author. The limited edition leader, Create Confidence to Conquer Life, is her fabulous book. And she's a teenage resilience expert, as well as being a cognitive scientist. And you can see when you hear from Paula about what she does, how those two sides of her actually coalesce so beautifully to help teenagers and, of course, their parents and their teachers, to help them to have the best foundation to build their confidence, but also build their ability to get out into the world and be the wonderful people that they've essentially been brought into this world to be. So Paula, thank you for joining us. And I'd love to start just by asking you a bit more about the book and why you wrote it.
First of all, thanks, Jane, for having me on your show. And thank you all for taking the time out to have a listen to what I have to say. So thank you. Thank you so much. Why did I write the book? Actually, initially, I was going to write the book specifically for teenage girls. And I started writing the book during actually lockdown last year. And so one day I just started writing and I was just pouring everything out of me and it was just coming out. And by the end of it, I realized I was writing to myself. And then I kind of went, well, why am I writing it to myself? Well, it's not just myself, it's to women my age or Generation X busy working mums who have potentially teenage girls, because we've got so much mental health issues going on, and obviously with the pandemic it's been exponential, and there's so many different avenues that people can take to work on their mental health, and I guess the mainstream or standard practice at these days is that if you're having anxiety and you're having stress and overwhelm in your life, you quickly run to your GP, talk about those issues with him or her, write a mental health care plan, then you're off. Then they send you off to see a psychologist. And so what's been happening with teenage girls is the same thing, because obviously that's the standard of practice and that's the normality that we see today. But what I've found is that when teenage girls are going through this process of uncertainty and they're plagued by hormonal imbalances, trying to work out who they are as individuals, trying to fit in and belong, and the uncertainty of life and pandemic, being sent to the GP and writing a mental health care plan and being shoved off to see a psychologist, these girls are starting to worry about that there's something wrong with them, that they're broken, that they need to be fixed. And this is something that I think I grew up with growing up, and probably a lot of people from my generation and previous generations have encountered, thinking that there's something wrong with us, that if we're different, we need to be fixed. And so we go through life thinking we're not good enough. And so I wrote this book in terms of wanting to help parents or women who think like me and think, well, maybe sending my child to a psychologist is not always the answer, and that maybe there's an alternative approach. And this book gives you a really pragmatic, down-to-earth, looking at scientific science, as well as using anecdotal evidence of myself. So it's kind of meshing a bit of personal development as well as science and psychology together.
Fantastic. And what approach do you take when you're talking to young girls? Where do you start, Paula? Oh, is it only young girls, I should ask, or girls and boys?
Yeah. I guess predominantly it's been girls coming to me. I haven't said no to boys. I did work with one 14-year-old boy as well, but it's mostly girls that are coming to me, because obviously the mums are the ones that are facilitating this push.
Mm-hmm.
They are seeing changes in their daughter's behaviour, and there is, of course, they get worried and they're looking for approaches. So it's the mother. So maybe even the father's thinking about it, it's the mother that's. Yeah. So in answer to your question, yes, I do work with girls from the age of 25 and under. Okay.
And where do you tend to start? What's the thing they come to you and say they need help with?
Yeah, a lot of the time is that they're lacking in motivation.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they're lacking in motivation. They're feeling stressed. They're feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes they use the words, I'm anxious.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of that time is really, and what the parents are seeing is that maybe the child is becoming more, stuck into their phones and on social media all the time, like it's like a habitual thing, or they're watching Netflix or watching TV more of. So it's the change of the behavior that the parents are picking up. And in some instances, it can actually impact their academic performance as well. So that's when it becomes more critical.
And are you often called in by schools? Have you managed to kind of crack into schools at all? Because I know they can be a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, I guess the challenge with schools is that they have their preferred providers. Yeah, generally they have a lot of regulations. I mean, I come from the scientific medical research background, so we are highly regulated in everything, because you're dealing with patients and private and confidentiality. So when you're going into schools as well, they have their own set of codes and regulations that they have to adhere by. So it can be quite challenging to introduce or bring something in if it's not part of the course curriculum, because again, it's all about wanting all their students to experience the same thing. And more often than not, the work I do is not tailored for all students, because some students may not even are interested in what I have to offer. So it becomes more bespoke, if that makes sense. Having said that, I'm actually going to be piloting my 8-week resilient leadership program at a school in South Australia, starting at the end of this week.
Oh, fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit more about the program? That's right, you're actually getting applause here. Tell us more about the program. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. Well, initially my book came from a three-hour workshop. So my 3-hour workshop was called Create Confidence to Conquer Life. So those that are budding authors that want to write a book but not sure where to get started or how to get started, or a bit concerned about getting started, I started off reverse engineering my 3-hour workshop into this book. And then I turned it into a book. So yes. So in terms of, sorry, what was your question?
Just to tell us more about the workshop. Yes.
Yeah. So that was the 3-hour workshop. But then the 3-hour workshop was actually another spin-off from my 8-week resilient leadership program. And then initially it was a 12-week program. And then I spoke to a principal discussing the logistics of the program, and then it got condensed to 10 weeks because of the school term. So essentially this program was to coincide with the school term, so be run every term, so 4 times a year, and so be also part of the co-curricular activities, so giving students the opportunity, so they don't want to go play chess or sport of some kind, they could actually develop their resilient leadership skills doing my course. So that was the theory.
Got it. And so then the new program that's
so now,
I guess, hasn't it?
Yeah, so now the new program has evolved. I've condensed it down to 8 weeks, because again, it's about not wanting to give them too much overload, but also giving the students some time to digest the information and not sort of string it out too long, because obviously their attention span is limited.
Interesting. And you're focusing on this particular market, on the younger people. Yeah. That's obviously, I would say, an underserviced area that you've identified.
Yeah, I think I guess the difference to what I do compared to what's currently run at schools or through other providers, is the fact that I worked in corporate, I've worked in leadership, I've worked in STEM, and also seeing the challenges both firsthand and through other women, that there have been 5 challenges in the workplace that women face today. And one of the things I wanted to do was reverse engineer a program that encompassed those challenges, but creating strategies in place and tools that the girls of today, who are quite insightful for being Gen Z, can start to implement. And one of the things I found also is, as you're developing your identity, being a teenager is a great opportunity as they're molding and shaping who they are, encompass these new tools and techniques that they can actually take with them as they grow and mature, and they use that as a foundation in which to build upon.
Got it. And what are the 5 challenges?
Yeah, one of the 5 challenges, obviously, the first one is overcoming our self-doubt, feeling like, we're not good enough, trying to compare ourselves to others and going, well, where are we sitting? The second one is dealing with the unconscious and conscious biases in the workplace. Many women, especially Gen Xers, we were like, no, let's focus on our careers, let's focus on careers. And then you hit your 30s and you think, oh, well, maybe I should start having a family. And then there's that concern about, well, if I start having a family, am I going to be taken seriously for promotions? Am I going to be taken seriously, or are they going to think, oh, well, she's just wanting to have kids? So there's some challenges around the gender disparity there. Mm-hmm. Third thing is looking at, again, cracking the glass ceiling, the lack of opportunities for promotion, for growth. I mean, we're so highly connected and we're so highly, we're so global, is that not only are we competing with people in our own geographic location, but also internationally for the same role. And then the next step is, the next challenge is also, conflicting roles. So being career focused and versus motherhood, and having that feeling guilty that you're kind of failing at both. And then the 5th one is, which I hate to say, but can happen, is the lack of support from other women. So, because we have this scarcity mindset, this feeling that we're not enough with our self-doubt, that we're being judged, that there's we're feeling that there's lack of opportunities for promotion, then we start to gang up on one another. And if you're in a toxic work culture, that can be amplified.
And I won't get you to list off all the tools, but what are the top couple of things that people can pick up fairly quickly or easily? Maybe not.
Well, the things that I work through with teens is basically, yes. One of the things I found is building a strong identity in a teenager is the key to raising grounded, confident girls who can make smart choices. And by doing that, it's about developing their confidence. So it's about developing the self-awareness of who they are, understanding their values, their strengths, their weaknesses, and encompassing all of that. And then the other thing, after they've developed that foundation of understanding who they are, that's when they can move on to developing conscious inclusion. So basically ensuring that, they can empathize with other people. So you're kind of eliminating that bias, that unconscious and conscious bias, by going, well, I know I'm confident in who I am, so I'm willing to look at other people's perspectives and know that these people are not a threat, but it's a form of banding together and learning from each other and growing from each other. So each part of my program builds on something else. So at the end of the day, we get to a point where when they move into the workforce, that their identities are in check. So it's about knowing who they are on the inside, regardless of what's going on around them, and coming as a team together, working collaboratively in the workplace.
Great. I mean, I can just imagine the ripple effect of that. The fact of more people having more confidence earlier in life and more awareness as well. This is, among other things, that these are kids that will be coming through with a lot more awareness.
Exactly. And, that's something I would have liked to have had at that age.
Absolutely.
Asking mum and dad, what do you think I should do? This, that, the other, asking all my friends who didn't have any idea either. Being misinformed. And I mean, obviously we didn't have the internet in those days to Google anything. So it's probably even more concern for the Gen Zs, because they are switched on. They're very switched on generation. But also the concern of what are they Googling on the internet? What information are they obtaining? And is it helpful, or is it hindering their identity, their personal development and their professional development?
Interesting. Now, because just about everybody I know on this session are actually authors, you've done some wonderful work in terms of getting the message about your book out there, Paula. I wonder if you could share with us, and one of the things I'm particularly interested in, how did you get so many really great quality testimonials? And then we'll talk about the way you leverage that on social media too, if we can, because it's just just fabulous what you've done.
Yeah, thank you. To me, it didn't feel like rocket science or anything, but I guess from my perspective, one of my highest qualities is building relationships and connections with people. So, I mean, Jane's known me for quite a number of years as I've been exploring my identity in my business and where I fit in the grand scheme of things. And so for me, I've met so many wonderful people along my journey, but I don't dismiss them. You know, they're not people that I would say, well, if you can't help me now, well, I don't want to know you. That's not how it works. And so for me, I guess because I've been developing a lot of these relationships for quite some time. And what does that look like? It looks like anywhere from, catching up with people, having a coffee, getting to understand who they are, their businesses or their organizations, you know, just getting to know them like that without any, you know, commitment or any expectation. To the other extreme where, you know, you're connecting with somebody on, say, LinkedIn, engaging with their content, making comments, maybe sharing some free stuff with them. You know, again, not trying to sell them anything. It's nothing worse when you try to sell, you know, you connect with somebody and then they all of a sudden they just blast you something like, here, join my, you know, get rich quick scheme and all that sort of thing. But yeah, so I think for me that was probably the secret to building those profiles, and obviously asking for help. I think asking for help as well.
That's a great point. And at what stage did you reach out to people? Because I look, from what I saw, you really had quite a lot of reviews. So that, I mean, that takes time and energy, of course, as well. But just the specifics is really helpful for people to know. Yeah.
Okay. So the specifics.
Just in terms of, you know, I saw one from Tracy Spicer. There were quite a few from principals from schools and what have you, which are really relevant, really good. People like Tracy Spicer. Do you need to give them a lot of time? Are they actually reading the book, or are you sending them a portion of the book, or just how it all actually flowed out?
Yeah, well, I connected with Tracy about 4 years ago, and so I connected with her on LinkedIn. I've been following her for quite a while. I met her at an event one time, at a live event, and she had brought her book to do some signing when she first published her book, The Good Girl Strip there. And, you know, I was just in awe of, you know, what she went through, you know, being on the news, a really great high profile news presenter, and then being sacked when she was on maternity leave. I mean, that was just wrong, you know, and the fact that she stood up for herself, you know, to go against what probably, you know, many of us would not have done, you know, to stand up to the authorities and say, well, this is discrimination, it's unfair and it's uncalled for, and actually winning. So, you know, she put herself out there. She took a risk, not a risk just for herself, but for her girl, and also for other women. So that was what it drew me to Tracy. So it wasn't the sense that, oh yeah, she's an influencer or she's a high profile person that I need to shove a book under. It was more about our values were aligned. I admired the work she was doing, because again, as authors, we want to align ourselves with people that we are drawn to, that we radiate similar core values. Otherwise, there's no point, you know. Yeah. So I built that relationship with her for about 4 years. And yeah, and when you're dealing with somebody who's high profile, you can't just sort of flick something underneath them and say, hey, do this, do that, because they're not going to respond, because they get that all the time, as we know. And so eventually I asked her if she wouldn't mind reading my book and if she'd be happy to write a testimonial. And she said yes. And the fact that we were aligned in our values and the way we want to empower women and improve the next generation of women, it was an easy sell. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I didn't have to do a hard sell to say, you know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I told her exactly, you know, what the book was about, where it was supposed to go, and whether she would like to be part of it. And she said yes.
Fantastic. And then in terms of, building a vibe for the book and building profile for yourself, then that was an excellent vehicle to have, you had just sort of formatted and branded just square box really with the words in it. And those were regularly popping up in my feed. And I just remember, I was just really impressed with you that it's the one thing to ask for a review. And then it's the other thing to, very proudly announce that you have the review, to be using that to build really the vibe around the book. And it certainly worked really well. And you got to bestseller status. Congratulations for that, Paula.
Thank you so much. I was stoked. I was really excited to see that in difference and people were interested. And as you know, it's not a really big book. The idea was to write a condensed book, like a Reader's Digest equivalent, because for my market was basically busy working professional mums. If I wrote a 300-page book, they'd probably buy it, but they probably never read it. And my point was that I wanted to use this book as a calling card, as a business card to say, here, if your daughter's having confidence issues, read my book. And if it resonates with you, come work with me. So that's how I use my book.
Brilliant. Yes, I love it. And there was the question that somebody forwarded me was to ask you a little more about that building resilience piece. You're the teenage resilience expert. I think they hooked onto that and just interested in the building resilience. And I'm picking up already, it's about identity and certainty and identity, but a little bit more about resilience.
Yeah, okay. So we all know resilience and the talk of bouncing forward and looking to the future and, using various, I guess, soft skills to basically get over an adversity in our lives. So I guess for me, my adversity started off at birth. So I do have a backstory to being a resilience expert as well. So it's not just learning the scientific and psychological nature of resilience, but also I lived experience as well. And so for me, I was born with a cleft lip. So obviously I came across, when I was born, I looked different. And so I had various challenges growing up. And it wasn't until I started school, primary school, that I noticed I was different to the other kids. And it was basically all the body language. So feeling excluded, also being teased. So I was being verbally and physically teased or assaulted daily at school. And it wasn't until I was in year 1, so I was 6 years old, and by then I had gone through about 1.5 years of bullying at school, that I decided to tell my teacher. And so I plucked up the courage, and I remember that quite well. And I went to talk to my teacher and to tell her that I was being bullied in the playground. And instead of her listening to what I had to say or, comforting me, she pointed at the door and she yelled, "Go away, don't tell tattletales." And I remember that. I felt embarrassed, I felt humiliated, and most of all, I felt shame. And I walked out. And the lesson I learned at that event was that that my voice didn't count. My feelings didn't matter. Those in authority turned a blind eye. And so I grew up with those feelings, those beliefs, and those inner shame, because after that incident, I was still getting bullied and teased for the rest of my primary school years. So I had 6-7 years of bullying, taunts and teases. And so I guess in a sense, the reason why I'm working with teenagers or with kids, because I want educators to see also that maybe this teacher was having a bad day, maybe she was having a bad day. Maybe her marriage was breaking down. I don't know what was going on for her, but for me, I took it personally, because when you're a child, there's no filter, we internalize everything. So for me, I took it personally that, no, it's my fault. I deserved what I got. And that created my identity of not being enough, that I was less than everyone else, you know, that my feelings didn't count, that those in authority turned a blind eye. And as I grew up as an adult, what did that do to me? That did to me where I didn't want to rock the boat. You know, maybe, you know, I didn't want to put my hand up to say anything. Knowing that authority turns a blind eye. So why would I stick my neck out? No, yeah. And so it wasn't until I got into leadership in corporate that I started learning new skills, new code of conduct, a way of being. It's like, you know, and I really admired those skills. It was like, wow, it taught me a new framework of how to be brave, how to stand in my identity and own it without feeling shame. You know, being a leader in, you know, it just, able to influence and inspire those around me as well. And, you know, and helping me live a congruent life, you know, where I'm walking the talk. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, that culminated and created this sense of identity, this strong identity for me. So able to reflect back to my younger years and all the trigger points and all the repetitions of that event culminating in my life, I was able to stop that and develop, you know, move forward in a more positive and constructive way. So in terms of resilience expert, I think, definitely I am, because it's not only you going through adversity, and we've all gone through something in life. I could recommend, if I asked each and every one of you what your story is, you've got something to tell me. And that's what shapes who we are, but it doesn't have to define us. And that's the bottom line.
Fantastic. Reminds me of Brene Brown, who says, you know, if we own our story, we get to write our own ending. If we don't own it, then it owns us.
It does.
And just listening to you talk then, Paula, I can just imagine how young girls in the teenage years would respond to you, because whether you share that with them or not, they will know. They know that they have the feeling. They've been through their own stuff. And for somebody to be able to put a language around it and to be role modeling the other side of it is an incredibly powerful position that you're in.
Yes. And I think also with the girls that I work with, or work alongside with, they're all beautiful girls. They're beautiful souls inside and out, you know, and I use my backstory, not for sympathy, but for them to understand that, you know, the challenges they're facing today with social media, self-esteem, self-image, you know, trying to work out, you know, using their looks and comparing themselves to each other and those on social media. I mean, I was born this way, you know, I was born to look this way. And obviously there's so much surgery one can do, but like, I'm happy, you know, I'm happy in my own skin. I've never allowed, you know, how I look to dictate what I do in life. You know, I found a man that loves me, you know, I got married, you know, I'm working on my career, decide to step out and start a business, you know, there's things that it hasn't stopped me. So, and I don't want these girls to feel that way either.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Look, I bet there are people just itching to ask questions. Are you ready for questions, Paula? Are you okay?
Oh, bring them.
Is there anything else you need to say before that, though? Is there anything that I haven't asked you about to prompt you? In any case, I bet someone asked some track of the questions. So who would like to ask Paula a question?
Oh, I think Claire does.
Claire, fantastic. Oh, we need to unmute you. I think you need to click your button, Claire.
Yeah, done that.
Oh, beautiful. Excellent.
Okay, this is fascinating. Thank you so much. I seem to be resonating with everything that's being said this morning. It's great. The one thing that really jumped out for me was you saying that resilience was about bouncing forward, not back. And it's something that I feel very strongly about. I mean, my story is, recovery from stroke, nearly 6 years ago now. And people used to say to me, "Oh, well, you'll bounce back." And I would say, "Well, if I bounce back, what's coming next is a stroke." So I don't want to go back there. Thank you very much. But I didn't think of saying, let's bounce forwards. I just said, no, bouncing back's not a good idea at all. It's a different way of looking at resilience, which I so agree with you. Thank you for that, Paula.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Claire. I think resilience for each and every one of us is a different definition. I mean, those who work in corporate, they'll use this kind of term, this lingo of bouncing forward. And sometimes I cringe because the way sometimes corporates wrap around when they try and do resilience workshops or something, they use a lot of these wordings, but it's about bringing the emotional side into it. It's all there. Everything they do is all more left brain. And then you're kind of like going, oh yeah, they're ticking boxes. So it's about, bringing in that emotional side of resilience as well, because as you know, like Claire said, she just, she had gone through a stroke and there's a healing process. There's a healing process when you're going through adversity. It's not that all of a sudden, oh, I've just fallen over and I'm going to stand back up and I feel great. You don't. There's a process. And the line is not linear. It's like, you're going across life, you go dip and then you go back up, like down and then up and then down and up and down, maybe another down and then you go back up. I think that's the thing. And that's the thing I want to teach, these teenage girls, is that resilience is not about just, oh, I've fallen over and I've gotten back up and it's all good, high five, and I think that's one of the things that the millennials have missed out on, because their parents have tried to sort of cotton wool them. And I'm saying this because I've got nephews and nieces that are millennials, and they just kind of get cotton wooled around. Yeah, you can go and do anything and be anything, and this. Things don't go according to plan. They're getting out the tissue boxes and they're crying, woe is me, and they're plastering it all over social media. So I think one of the things I found that are different with the Generation Z kids is that I think they're a bit more pragmatic. They do know that life is hard, life is a challenge, but they're willing to step up and make it happen as well.
Interesting, thank you. Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to comment on was that I have a 13-year-old granddaughter who's my son's girl.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing the effect that her behaviour has on my son. So there's a lot of emotions going around, and I'm feeling for my son, but I'm feeling for the granddaughter as well. So I'm kind of, all over the place really when I see this happening. But it's all part of the process of her growing up, and she's lovely when she's lovely. Yes, of course.
Yeah, they kind of get that bipolar sort of feeling going, where 1 minute they're really sweet and the next minute they're like, ah! It's okay. It's all normal. I swear, it's all normal. So the things that I see with the girls when I have one session with them, if I digress back to that, a lot of the time they'll say to me, Paula, I don't know if this is normal, but, and then they'll give me some scenarios, because again, it's going down the rabbit hole of thinking that there's something wrong with them.
Right.
Explain to me, what their thought process is. It's like, no, it's completely normal. What you're feeling or what you're thinking is normal. We just need to give you, some tools and strategies around it.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Paula. That's great.
Pleasure, Claire.
And who's next?
I'll ask a question.
Hey, Thomas.
How are we?
I'm well. How are you?
Very well. I'm just trying to get names. I'm pretty bad with name. Paula, I'd just like to say you're beautiful inside and out. And as you said someone just a name just sent bipolar. So you're actually talking to a gentleman that's got bipolar. So I know the highs and lows, and I can understand where you're talking about how you can be up and then you can be like low. basically I call it the roller coaster.
Mhm. Mm.
And everything. My question is, being in your business now, how has it been for you since you've left school and you've been through the corporate industry to now?
Okay, in terms of, in what way?
In a way of people react around you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't feel that I've had any discrimination on how I look. So if that makes sense. For me growing up, I wrapped my identity around my career and my achievements rather than my looks. And as all of us, and this is what I've said in my book as well, it kind of explains when we're trying to work out who we are, our identities, we base it around, how we see ourselves, how others see us, and how we want to be seen. And when you wrap those three together, depending on which lever is more stronger influence to you, towards you or not, or away from you, define who you are. So for me, I guess I valued my my career, my academic achievements as part of who I was. So everything I focused on was chasing the carrot at the end of the stick. So for me, getting into corporate, I started off in a lab working in medical research, working on experimentation. Hated it because I liked being around people. So I went from being isolated in a lab to working with people in hospitals, and I was running medical research trials in hospitals. Then I found my place in the corporate space. So it was I always had this inquisitive nature. Like I'd meet somebody and go, oh, what do you do? Oh, how do you become that? And then trying to find a way to become that. Trying to role model and find people that I admired that I wanted to emulate. If that makes sense. So I worked my way up into the corporate space and into corporate leadership because, it was admiring the people that were in leadership. I had colleagues saying to me, oh, Gigi, you have a great name. And I was like, oh, really? Thanks. I'm just doing my job, things like that. So it's really, that's how I did it. And then essentially stepping out in my business, for me, I got to a point in the corporate world that I felt my values were misaligned this organization I was working with wasn't quite the right cultural space for me.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that I should step out and do something else, make a difference in a different way. And that's when I went on a soul searching exploratory bender for years. It wasn't, so for me it was doing a lot of personal development, a lot of studying, positive psychology, NLP, coaching, hypnosis, counseling. I did so many things. I also mentioned that in my book, the different ways, the different routes I went to develop myself and to build that confidence and self-assurance and that strong identity into being a limited edition leader. So that's how I did it, Thomas.
And how are your family supportive? Are they very supportive of what you did, of like how you're jumping from job to job, career to career?
Well, both my parents have passed away, so I'm not really around to judge. I did have a comment once from my sister. She's a baby boomer, so for her, that probably created a lens of instability for her. And oh, you're just jumping around too much. You're like, this, like as if I'm floundering. But I think, as you would all know, those in entrepreneurship, that's what entrepreneurship is all about, right? It's about instability. It's about, testing things and being agile and moving and into the environment. Yeah, my husband was good. Yeah, he allowed me the grace and the space and the financial space to play around with my business. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for letting us know.
Not a problem. But yeah, it's a tough gig, isn't it, Jane? It's a tough gig.
Now, I'm remembering when we met Paula, we were at a Business in Heels event and coming from different places because, I'd been a public servant my whole working life up to the age of 52, then made redundant, then, having to try and find my way in business. So in many ways, you and I think we were both very early in our businesses and both a little bit lost in different ways. And I remember you spoke up about somebody telling you didn't need a website. It was a question or something that you had said that. And I just couldn't wait to get you in a space and say, just if there's one thing I've learned on this journey is to be careful who you take advice from. And that's just my, throwing that in there. But it was interesting, the question that you asked, Robert, because I came from that place where you may not exactly have a job for life, but certainly all of my siblings did. And I was, my father was a public servant. I came from Canberra, so that's the kind of jobs that you're likely to get there. But boy, did I buy into that idea of security and what it looks like, and how paradoxical is it then that I'm one of the first round of people in the New South Wales government once I moved up here, and first round of people where there were compulsory redundancies. And I'm kind of like, whoa, this is interesting. And boy, did that set off a trajectory of personal development and immense growth. And I do say to people now, wow, why didn't that happen to me when I was 30? And I would have had all this much time to have this much, maybe not always fun. Business can be tough, but by gosh, I'm never going to work another day in my life if this is what work looks like. Claire, you appreciate that. But yes, I tell you what, though, I'm just so happy to see what's going on for you, Paula, and the fabulous things. And I'm just going to really proudly share with people, although of course COVID put the moxie on this, but you were going to be speaking at an event with Wendy Harmer.
Yep.
Who else? There were quite a number of great names there.
Tracy Spicer as well.
Yes.
I can't remember the other authors, but there the guy with the bandana. What was his name? Is it Glenn something? His wife is the newsreader on the Pro.
Peter Fitzsimmons.
Yes. That's right. Who pitched that? Was that you, Claire?
No, it was me.
Oh, good on you. That's right, the bandana. So, I mean, this isn't that great, though? That was you and all the work you've done on yourself and this wonderful book. I mean, you're getting noticed. You really are.
I think if you're passionate about something and you've written something from the heart and, it's about one thing I've learned, especially for us women who don't like to stand up and shine and, a lot of us go, well, our work should speak for itself. Why do we need to have to self-promote and blah, blah, blah? But one thing I've learned as well is how to, for the blokes on here, it's no offense, but it's sometimes you've got to think like a man as well. Not act like a man. But it's about thinking like a man, thinking in the sense that, men like to take more risks than women do because it's just the way we've been brought up, the way things have been passed down from generation to generation. We have to be cautious as women because, we're supposed to be the sensible ones. If we're not cautious, bad things can happen to us, on many different levels, whereas men can take more risks. They're, it's the style. It's like being an entrepreneur where, you need to take more risks. You need to be agile and flexible in things. So I think that's one of the things that I've learned in entrepreneurship and business is to put yourself out there, which is the hardest thing to do. Out there. Because, I don't like getting rejected. I don't like liked. That's the hard thing as well, because that's one of my internal, barometers as well. So if somebody's like making a comment or a negative comment, it's like I want to hide because it's triggering me back to when I was little. But knowing in my heart that maybe the person who's making the comment, they're not my audience. So why should I care what they think or how they feel? Move on. And so it's trying to develop that sort of resilience that way and going, water off a duck's back.
Interesting.
I have a question.
Great. Go ahead.
Hi, Paula.
Hey, V.
My name is Victoria, and I'm a personal stylist. I help others to package their style and their stories into a success story. So today I'm here to support you and Jane in this environment, but mostly I support you on LinkedIn, but a little bit louder and sometimes in a very subtle way. The very interesting thing that brought me here today with this question is I have two questions. The first one is, how big is your book? And my second question is, what role does a color plays in the choice of the cover or the color of your book? And what does that mean to you personally and to your audiences? So that's my question. Thank you for being here today.
No, pleasure, Victoria. Yeah, it's like a bit of color psychology there.
Jane knows what I'm talking about.
Have you drawn the link between the color of the book and the color of Paula's jacket, Victoria?
I am looking very closely, as you know, Jane. I am so here and I'm loving it. I just couldn't wait to hear her speak out. So I'm loving it, but I want to hear it from her personally, what that means to her and to her audience.
Yeah, okay. Okay, first of all, my book's about 130 pages long, so it's not a big book. Okay. So if you're a mum, you can read it like in a couple of hours.
Okay.
And you either love me or hate me. Bring your daughter and work with me. So that's number one. Number two, the color. I tell you why the color speaks to me. It gives me a sense of calm.
Yeah.
But also freshness and vibrancy. It's like a push-pull effect. So even though it's not totally like dark green where it gets a bit clinical, because when I think dark green, it's a bit, clinical, therapeutic, therapy, that sort of thing, which is not what I wanted. The reason why I didn't choose colors like hot pink, like girly stuff, girly colors, I want that kind of stereotype. I want something that looks fresh, and it's part of my branding colors as well. I was playing with the cover of either having it all black, with like the same colors, but reversing things around. So maybe have black with turquoise, and then all of that. I had a look at it, and then I went, if I was targeting to corporate women, maybe I'd have done black because it symbolized more power, like more strength, more confidence, but I didn't want to scare my people off, because it's about young people, and so I wanted something fresh and innovative and yet peaceful, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. That is peaceful. I just want to say a little bit, Jenny, if I may. Is that okay?
Go ahead. Did you realize you haven't got your camera on?
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact is that color is very calming, and the story you've got to tell people has to be able to fish them from where they are hiding to bring them into your space. I asked that question because as Jane is aware, or most of the people who listen to me talking about the cover of your book and what, anyway, I have my own book called What Has Style Got to Do with It? And I go a little bit into why a person will choose a particular color and not the other one. Most of the time as authors, we make a mistake of choosing a color that appeals to someone else and has nothing to do with you as a person. So I asked that question to see if that color personally draw you into what it is that you are going to write about and how it makes you feel. The reason why your story is so powerful and is drawing a lot of people into your space is because you can connect with the book. Just by looking at that book, I'm not there with you, but I can see that just by holding that book in your hand. And every time you are talking about the book, it flows through the message you are conveying to people and how you want them to be drawn into your space. So first of all, they don't know you, they've never spoken to you before, but the book have to be able to speak to them in a language that they can connect with. And then through that, you can leverage that by giving them more as they demand whatever the request of whatever they want from you is. And that color is one of the most used color in the whole world
Oh,
because
really? Wow.
yeah, it's very calming. And if you look closely, they use it mostly also in interior decorations and stuff like that. So there you go. You have it on TikTok. So I've been looking at what impact that color is having on you when you are speaking. And also you are wearing it and it works with you in your color tone and everything else. So well done to you. You tick the boxes there.
Oh, wow. I wasn't always this color coordinated.
Okay, it works for you. It works for you. And in business, branding is everything. And
Yeah.
so if you don't get your colors right and your book is different from yourself and your personality and everything else, the message, the cover, and you yourself, all those three are very key important things that you have to pay attention to. And in this regard, you've got it. Regardless of whether you know something about styling or not, it works for you. So well done.
Thank you, Victoria. And like I said in my book, I'm glad you said all that, because that's exactly the vibe I wanted to resonate with people, because I've written the book in the first person as well, because that's who I am. It's about building relationships and connections with each other. So when I'm writing, it's always in a conversation style. It's in the first person. So people are like reading my thoughts, and in themselves in the experience, so they can get something out of it.
Well done. Here is psychology at play on so many levels. So
Wow.
I'm enjoying it. Well done.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Lovely.
Fascinating. Yeah, thank you.
I think we've got time for one more question, if there's anybody waiting to ask anything.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Hi, Paula. It's so lovely to meet you. And isn't it interesting how our pain can be the path? And, from what you say, I can hear that you're somebody who is not only deeply authentic, but also very able to serve and connect. And that's really how you've got yourself to this place of such a powerful message and such a connected audience. So my question's a little more technical, which is that it seems to me you did a pivot from the corporate world then into this at some point, and now you have this book as a business card. How did you go about creating a new audience and really using that book to leverage this new message that you were bringing?
Creating a new audience. That's an interesting one. I guess the second I knew what kind of audience I wanted to play in, the space I played in, I needed to know where they hung out. So initially I was targeting educators and high school principals. So I connected with them on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn was the platform I used, not Facebook, because generally Facebook is more just the fun and stuff, and more about career development, education stuff. So that's the space I played in. So I've been connecting with various people over the years, and then inviting them to join my newsletter, my monthly newsletter, and filtering bits and pieces to them. So it's a slow burn. That's how I did it. And I guess it's what you want to do is you want to prime your audience for quite a while. So, sometimes I used to get disillusioned and go, I can't be bothered doing another newsletter. Does anyone really care? How many clicks they open? And then occasionally I might share something personal in the newsletter, and then I'll get a couple of people responding and saying, oh, that really meant something to me. And I was like, oh my God, somebody actually, somebody's reading it. So even getting that one affirmation from a response from a newsletter, I was like, that's great. It's somebody's reading it. It's making a difference. So that's kind of what I do. And then obviously getting involved and helping other people out, finding out who plays in the space that you're playing, and building those relationships with those people if you can. Again, the other tip would be, if you are going to play in a similar space with people that your market is looking at already, are you offering the same stuff? Like, in other words, are you going to be a competitor? Because that can be quite challenging. Or are you going to be somebody that you can collaborate? So you might have something different to what the audience is looking at, following that person. So maybe there's a way that you can help them. Maybe you published a book, they don't have a book. You could say, hey, you know, maybe this book would be of interest to your audience, and then you can plug something for them in your channels. You know, that's sort of that. I always think, don't always think that when you try to partner with somebody, it's all about monetary gain, because sometimes it could be something else. Could be a distribution, could be like getting on a podcast, something like this. I don't know, you know, you don't know where it will lead.
Well, do you think that your ethic of serving so deeply in relationship is really obviously the thing that's carried you so powerfully?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I guess I've always had that sense of service. I mean, that was a value that I grew up. I came from a working class family, you know, European working class family. I'm first generation Australian, born and bred here. So, you know, I was instilled with, you know, you've got to work hard for $1. You know, life wasn't meant to be easy, you know, that sort of thing. And I guess, you know, coming from that sort of values, yeah, you all help each other out, because sometimes you can always have money to help someone out, so you can help out in other ways.
Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure.
Yes, look, thank you, Paula. This has been wonderful. I think the work that you're doing is fantastic, and I really want to thank you for doing that. That's you're creating foundations for the people coming behind us, and I just appreciate you so much for that. Now, would you let everybody know where they can find you? What's the best route? Is it LinkedIn, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn under Paula Dunn. You can also find my website. It's no limits with an S consulting, one word, .com.au. I also have my book on there in the resources section if you'd like to jump on, or you can also get it at Amazon or Booktopia. You can get your copy there too if you're interested. But yeah, connect with me if you like on LinkedIn.
All right now. Well, look, I think we've really kept to time beautifully today. It's not always the way, but I want to thank you all. There have been some wonderful questions. As always, the energy in this group it makes my day. Wednesdays is my best day of the week. And thank you very much. And Paula, I can't wait to hear back from you on how your pilot goes, because I just think there's so much that can be done here in this space, and it's so great that you're doing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jane. And thank you all for holding the space. And I hope you got something out of today's session. And yeah, I look forward to getting to know you all as well.